AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 28F, have always had a close relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 25F. Growing up, we were inseparable. We shared clothes, secrets, and even friends at times. Our parents divorced when I was 16, and Emily was 13, so I spent a lot of time looking out for her and trying to make sure she felt supported. Over the years, our bond only grew stronger, even as we moved to different cities for college and work. We talk regularly, call each other about anything, and I have always considered her a best friend as much as a sister. Last year, Emily told me she was engaged to her boyfriend, Mark, 27M. Initially, I was happy for her. I wanted her to be happy and thought she had found someone who treated her well. However, over time, I started noticing things about Mark that bothered me. He is charming on the surface, but manipulative behind closed doors. He often makes subtle digs at Emily's intelligence and independence, sometimes even in front of me. For example, during a family dinner, he interrupted Emily multiple times, corrected her unnecessarily, and then smirked at me when she tried to defend herself. I tried to dismiss it as him being socially awkward, but it became a pattern. The biggest red flag for me happened a few months ago. Emily invited me to lunch with Mark to get to know each other better. During that lunch, Mark started asking personal questions about my love life and career in a very invasive manner. When I politely tried to avoid answering, he laughed and said, "Oh, come on, you don't really think anyone would hire someone like you for that job, do you?" I was stunned and tried to steer the conversation back to Emily, but he kept making backhanded comments about my appearance, my choices, and even my family. I left that lunch feeling shaken and confused, and I couldn't believe Emily hadn't noticed or mentioned that he was being cruel. Since then, I have tried to give him a fair chance. I've made efforts to engage in conversations with him, compliment him, and treat him like family, but he continues to belittle both me and Emily in subtle ways. Whenever Emily brings up wedding plans, Mark is controlling and dismissive of her ideas. He constantly undermines her choices, and she seems to be increasingly anxious and stressed. I tried talking to her about it gently, saying, "I just want to make sure you're happy and not being treated unfairly," but she brushed it off and said I was overreacting and being judgmental. Now, the wedding is approaching, and Emily has asked me to be part of the bridal party. I love her, but I cannot bring myself to stand beside her while Mark is present. I feel like doing so would be endorsing his behavior and ignoring the way he treats her. I also fear that my presence might not be welcomed by him and could make the day stressful for Emily. I tried to explain my feelings to her, saying that I couldn't in good conscience attend because of Mark's treatment of me and the way I've seen him treat her, but she became very angry. She accused me of being selfish, controlling, and trying to ruin her happiness. Our parents are divided. My mom supports me, saying that Emily needs to see Mark for who he is, while my dad thinks I'm overstepping and should just put my feelings aside for the sake of the wedding. Family friends have also weighed in, some siding with me, others with Emily. I feel caught in the middle, torn between my love for my sister and my moral objection to Mark. I decided to make a compromise. I offered to attend the wedding, but asked that I not have to interact with Mark directly. I suggested staying mostly with other family members and helping behind the scenes with decorations and logistics. Emily immediately rejected this, saying it would be disruptive and that I couldn't just pick and choose how to behave at her wedding. She said if I couldn't stand beside her, I shouldn't come at all. I genuinely don't want to cause conflict, but I also can't ignore my instincts. I keep replaying all the incidents with Mark in my head, the belittling comments, the dismissive attitude, and the control over Emily's choices. I feel like if I attend, I would be complicit in allowing this behavior to go unchallenged, and I'm not sure I can forgive myself if I do. At the same time, I am devastated at the thought of not being there for my sister on one of the most important days of her life. I have tried talking to Emily repeatedly, but she says I am making a mountain out of a molehill and that I am hurting her more by refusing to attend. She insists that I don't understand their relationship and that Mark makes her happy, which she says should be enough for me. I've explained that I am not trying to control her happiness, but that I cannot ignore patterns of abuse I've witnessed. She refuses to listen and now our relationship is tense. I have reached out to a few of my closest friends for advice. Most of them say I'm justified in protecting myself from toxic behavior, but some worry that I might be pushing my sister away entirely. I keep wondering if there is a way to salvage our relationship without compromising my values, but so far, I haven't found a solution. So Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé, even though it hurts her. I love her deeply and I want to support her, but I cannot ignore the way Mark treats both of us. I feel stuck between my moral boundaries and my desire to be there for her, and I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she forgot her passport for a month-long trip. So this is going to be a bit of a long one because there are a lot of moving parts, but I'll try to be clear. I, 32F, live in a mid-sized city in the U.S. I work as a software engineer and have been living alone in a decent apartment for about 5 years. My sister, Rachel, 29F, lives in another state and has always been the kind of person who seems to have everything figured out until something goes completely sideways. A few months ago, Rachel was planning a month-long trip to Europe. She'd been saving for it for over a year and was super excited. A week before her flight, she called me in a panic because she realized she didn't have her passport. She had misplaced it and didn't have time to get a new one issued before her trip. Naturally, she started looking into her options and found that her best bet was to come stay with me for the month while she figured things out. My city has the U.S. Passport Agency, and they could expedite her application. I was immediately skeptical. I work long hours, and the thought of having someone live in my apartment for an entire month while I try to do my job seemed stressful. I have a very small apartment, not a guest room, just a sofa and a pull-out bed that I rarely use. I tried to explain this to her over the phone, telling her that while I was happy to help for a few days, a month was really not feasible. Rachel's response was basically, "Come on, you can't just leave your sister in a bind. You're the only one who can help me. Just move your stuff around. I'll be fine. It won't be a big deal." I said no. I offered alternatives. She could book a hotel for a week while we try to get the passport situation sorted. I could help pay part of the hotel costs, or I could help her contact a courier service to expedite the passport. None of that was good enough. She insisted that staying with me was the only real solution, framing it as if I was being selfish. She also kept reminding me of all the times I'd stayed with her when visiting her state, which is true, but those are usually long weekends or a week at most, not a full month. At this point, I tried to set some hard boundaries. I said that I could host her for a few nights max, and then she would need to get a hotel or Airbnb. Rachel didn't take this well. She sent me multiple messages, some in the middle of the night, about how disappointed she was and that I was putting work over family. She even brought up our parents, suggesting that they would be upset with me if I didn't help her. I didn't bring our parents into it, and they actually backed me up when I called them to vent. They agreed that asking someone to host for a month with basically no notice was unreasonable. Eventually, Rachel started looking into other options, which was a relief. She managed to get an emergency passport appointment in her own state. But here's where it got complicated. During that month, she occasionally texted me asking if she could drop by for a coffee or store some luggage for a few hours. I was okay with small things like that, but every interaction seemed to turn into guilt-tripping about the original month-long stay. The breaking point for me was when she invited herself to a friend's wedding in my city. I wasn't planning on going initially because of work, but when I said I couldn't host her during that week, she got really upset. She started texting things like, "I guess I'm not welcome in your home then," and I thought family helped each other. I calmly replied that I would be happy to meet her somewhere for a meal or hang out during the wedding, but I could not provide lodging. She got really passive-aggressive, and I ended up muting her text for a while just to avoid constant arguing. A couple of weeks ago, she finally got her passport sorted and went on her trip. She sent me a few photos and said she was having the best time ever, which was great. However, when she returned, she made a point of telling me how much harder everything had been because I refused to help. She framed it as if I had actively tried to make her life difficult, which was hurtful because I did everything I could reasonably do without compromising my own life and space. The conflict escalated when our family got together for a holiday. Rachel started bringing up the incident in front of everyone, saying I didn't support her when she needed it most. I explained my side calmly, saying that a month-long stay was unrealistic for me and that I did offer other solutions. But she interrupted me multiple times and said I was just making excuses. My parents and some cousins agreed that my perspective made sense, but a couple of relatives sided with Rachel, saying I should have just sacrificed my comfort for family. I'm feeling frustrated and a bit guilty because Rachel is my sister and I do care about her, but I really don't think I did anything wrong. Hosting someone for a month with no notice in a small apartment, while also working full-time, seemed unreasonable. I also feel like Rachel is trying to rewrite the story to make me look like the villain, and our family dynamic has been strained ever since. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me for a month, even though she forgot her passport and framed it as an emergency? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she humiliated me in front of our entire family? I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 29F. Growing up, we had the usual sibling dynamics, occasional fights, constant teasing, but also a lot of support for each other. Our parents, while loving, were very much appearance-first types, and I always felt pressure to live up to their expectations. That being said, I've always tried to maintain my independence, career, and friendships without letting their opinions dictate my life. Emily got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark, 30M, and immediately, the wedding planning started. From the beginning, I noticed something off. Emily began dropping hints that certain family members were unacceptable for the wedding due to their jobs, appearance, or personality. I didn't think much of it at first, because I assumed it was just pre-wedding stress. I was invited as her maid of honor, and I was genuinely excited, until things started getting weird. It began with the dress shopping. Emily insisted I try on 3 specific dresses she had in mind. She kept making comments like, maybe this one will make you look less round, or you really shouldn't wear something too bold. We don't want you stealing attention. I laughed it off, thinking it was sisterly teasing, but the comments continued. She also started making subtle digs at my career, my single status, and even my living situation. Again, I brushed it off, trying to stay positive because I wanted this to be her special day. The real problem came during the wedding rehearsal dinner. Our family and some close friends were there, and Emily had arranged a special toast for me. I thought it would be a nice speech or a funny anecdote, but it turned into something else entirely. She started with, I want to thank my sister for always being, well, a work in progress, and then proceeded to bring up several personal and embarrassing incidents from my past, my failed relationships, a period when I struggled financially, and even some awkward moment from high school. Everyone laughed, including our parents. I was mortified, and I felt completely humiliated. After the dinner, I confronted Emily privately. I told her that what she did was not funny, it was cruel, and it made me feel disrespected in front of everyone. Her response was shocking. She said, "Oh, come on, it was all in good fun. Everyone knows you're sensitive. Stop taking things so seriously." I try to explain that a joke is one thing, but calling out deeply personal failures in front of a crowd is not acceptable. She got defensive and accused me of being ungrateful for all the work she had done organizing the wedding. The next day, I told her I didn't feel comfortable attending the wedding if I was going to be treated like that in front of all her friends and family. She became furious and told me I was being dramatic, selfish, and that I was ruining her big day. Our parents, surprisingly, sided with her. They said I should just get over it because the wedding was about Emily, not me, and that refusing to go would be disrespectful. My friends, on the other hand, told me I had every right to set boundaries and that being humiliated in front of everyone is not acceptable behavior from a sibling. I ended up not attending the wedding. Instead, I sent a heartfelt card to Emily explaining my feelings and that I could not participate in an event where I felt demeaned and disrespected. She hasn't spoken to me since the wedding. Family gatherings have become awkward, with my parents subtly guilt-tripping me about dividing the family. I feel sad and disappointed, but I also feel like I made the choice that preserved my dignity. Now, my extended family and some mutual friends are divided. Some say I overreacted and that weddings are stressful, so I should have put up with it. Others say Emily's behavior was cruel and that refusing to attend was justified. I'm torn because part of me feels guilty for missing what was supposed to be a happy occasion, but another part of me feels relieved that I didn't subject myself to public humiliation. I know people are going to say I should have just laughed it off or confronted her later, but the problem was the humiliation happened in front of everyone, and her reaction afterward showed no remorse. I don't want to be forced into a relationship dynamic where I'm made fun of and my feelings are invalidated, but I also don't want to be seen as the villain in my family for not attending my sister's wedding. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she humiliated me publicly, despite her protests and my parents' disapproval. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house, even though he's family now. So, this is going to be a long one because it's complicated, but I'll try to lay it all out clearly. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, who has been dating this guy, Jason, 27M, for about 3 years. They got engaged 6 months ago, and ever since I've been noticing subtle changes in the way Jason interacts with my family and me. I've tried to overlook most things because I want my sister to be happy, but recently, something happened that made me draw a firm boundary. My sister and I are really close, and we both live in the same city, though in different neighborhoods. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment, and I'm very particular about my space and routines. I've lived alone for a few years and have cultivated a lifestyle that works well for me. A quiet home, a strict cleaning schedule, and basically no unexpected visitors. Emily knows this and has respected it, except for when she assumes I'll make an exception for Jason. So here's what happened. Last week, Emily called me in tears. Jason had lost his wallet while traveling for work, and apparently, all his credit cards and cash were gone. He was stranded in the city and had no place to stay. Emily begged me to let him crash at my apartment for a couple of nights until he could sort things out. I immediately said no. I explained that I live alone and that my apartment isn't set up for guests. I also told her that I was not comfortable having Jason stay in my home because I don't feel a close personal relationship with him. He's my sister's fiancé, not my family, and I need to maintain my own space. Emily got upset and said I was being unreasonable. She said, "He's basically family now. How can you turn him away when he has nowhere else to go?" I reiterated my position calmly, but she started calling me selfish, uncaring, and even said I was letting your sister down. Jason, surprisingly, jumped on the call at one point and tried to guilt me too, saying that I could at least make temporary exceptions for family emergencies. I didn't back down, but I did try to offer alternative help. I suggested that I could help him find a cheap Airbnb, lend him some money via an app, or even drop off some essentials at his temporary place. I even called a friend of mine who sometimes has extra rooms and asked if Jason could stay there, but Emily didn't like any of these solutions. She kept saying that it was just 2 nights and that I was being cold. Here's where things escalated. The next day, Emily showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was crying and told me that Jason had nowhere to stay, so she assumed I would relent. I was furious because I had explicitly said no. I refused to let her in, and she left after a long argument on the doorstep. She sent me multiple texts after that, calling me selfish and saying that I was choosing my comfort over family. She also implied that this was going to cause a rift between us. It's been a week since then, and Emily hasn't spoken to me. She only communicates through short, angry texts. Our parents are now involved because Emily called them crying and told them what happened. My parents are upset with me, but they also understand my point of view. My mom said she thinks I have a right to set boundaries, but my dad keeps asking me why I can't just help out your sister's fiancé for a night or two. I honestly feel like my boundaries are being completely ignored. I've never had Jason in my home except for a few short visits when Emily came over. He's polite enough, but we don't have a real bond. I don't know him well enough to feel comfortable letting him stay in my home overnight, especially without Emily there. I also feel like Emily expects me to treat him as family just because they are engaged, which seems premature to me. To give some context, Emily has a history of putting me in uncomfortable situations. For example, she often assumes I'll drive her to places last minute or lend her things she could easily buy herself. And when I refuse, she gets upset. I love her, but I have my limits, and I don't think it's fair for her to push me like this. I've tried explaining to her that helping someone doesn't always have to mean having them in my home, but she doesn't seem to accept that. Since this incident, I've been feeling guilty but also firm in my stance. I keep replaying the scenario in my head, wondering if I really was too harsh. On the one hand, it was just 2 nights, and I could have made temporary adjustments. On the other hand, I genuinely do not feel safe or comfortable having him in my apartment without my sister there, and I think it's important to maintain my personal boundaries. I also worry that if I give in now, it will set a precedent, and she or Jason might expect similar favors in the future. I value my independence, and I don't want to feel obligated to host someone every time they face minor inconveniences. I've been trying to be reasonable, offering alternatives like paying for a temporary stay, but they don't seem to consider those options as valid help. So, Reddit, I'm torn. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my apartment, even though he's family now? I feel like I'm standing up for my personal space and boundaries, but Emily and Jason are making me feel like the bad person for it. I love my sister, but I don't think love means sacrificing my home and comfort for someone I barely know. I want to maintain a good relationship with Emily, but I also don't want to be guilted into actions that make me uncomfortable. At the same time, I understand that her perspective is that family should help each other in emergencies. I'm just not sure where the line is supposed to be, especially with someone who isn't technically family yet. I'm curious to hear an outside perspective because my friends are divided. Some say I was right to stick to my boundaries, while others say I should have at least let him stay one night. I want to do the right thing, but I also don't want to compromise my comfort and safety in my own home. So AITA? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade-long family dispute. I, 32F, have been in a strained relationship with my older sister, Claire, 36F, for most of my adult life. Our parents always had a classic favorite dynamic, which they didn't handle well. Claire was the golden child, the one who got praise for everything from school achievements to social events, while I was constantly compared to her. I won't lie, I carried resentment for a long time, and I did make some mistakes in my youth like snapping at her or being passive-aggressive during family events, but I also felt that my feelings were never really acknowledged. The issue began 10 years ago. I was 22 and just out of college when Claire decided to buy her first apartment. I was excited for her and offered to help her move and unpack, which was something I genuinely wanted to do. On the day of the move, I arrived early to help, but Claire immediately started criticizing everything I did. She told me I was too slow, that I was clueless about where things should go, and that I was making her move take longer. I tried to brush it off and keep helping, but the insults kept coming. I finally lost my patience when she started mocking how I carried boxes, and I walked out. That incident was the tipping point. Claire's friends and even some family members sided with her, saying I was overreacting. My parents told me I should have taken it in stride and not let my emotions get the better of me. I felt humiliated and unsupported. After that, I started limiting contact with her, mostly keeping it to polite birthday messages and holiday greetings. Over the years, our relationship only got more complicated. Claire had always been competitive, but after she got married at 28 and had 2 kids within 5 years, it seemed like she actively tried to one-up me at every turn. Whenever I mentioned a personal achievement, she would overshadow it with something bigger from her life. For example, when I got my first promotion at work, she immediately texted about her own career milestone from that same week. It became exhausting, and I slowly withdrew further. Fast forward to last year. Claire got engaged again, this time to a man named Daniel, who I had met a couple of times and found pleasant enough. When she called to invite me to the wedding, I felt conflicted. On one hand, I wanted to make an effort, but on the other, I remembered the history the pattern of emotional manipulation, and how my parents never intervened when Claire belittled me. I tried talking to my parents about my feelings, but they dismissed them, saying, "You have to put the past behind you for family events." I felt cornered. I decided to attend the rehearsal dinner, but not the wedding itself, hoping that a smaller gathering might be tolerable and that I could show some goodwill. When I arrived at the rehearsal dinner, it was awkward but manageable. Claire was cordial but cold. During dinner, she started making backhanded comments about my job, my apartment, and even my relationship status. It was subtle enough that others at the table laughed or didn't notice, but I felt hurt. I politely left early, saying I wasn't feeling well. The turning point came when Claire texted me the next day, saying, "We expected you at the wedding. Your absence was noticed, and it hurt our family." I tried to explain my side, detailing the long history of resentment, criticism, and emotional exhaustion, but she replied tersely, saying, "You're making this about yourself again. This day is about love and family, not grudges." I didn't respond. I felt trapped between wanting to honor my sister's big day and preserving my own mental health. A few weeks later, I received a group text from my parents and several relatives, essentially asking why I couldn't get over old drama and attend the wedding. They implied that I was being selfish and that my refusal caused unnecessary tension. Here's the context they seem to be missing. I've spent a decade trying to navigate a toxic dynamic. I've forgiven her privately, I've sent cards for birthdays and holidays, and I've tried to keep contact civil. But I also know that attending a major life event where I'm likely to be mocked or belittled would be emotionally damaging. It isn't just about holding a grudge. It's about self-preservation. Now, my parents are frustrated, some relatives have stopped speaking to me, and Claire herself is coldly polite whenever we meet in public. My partner and I have discussed it extensively, and he supports my decision, saying that no one should be forced into a situation that compromises their mental health. Some friends have told me that I'm overreacting and that family should come first, especially at weddings. Others have told me I have every right to protect myself and that my past experiences with Claire justify my choice. I'm starting to feel guilty, even though deep down, I know attending would have been a nightmare. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of emotional abuse and family favoritism. I feel like I've tried everything reasonable to maintain some connection, but I also refuse to subject myself to humiliation for the sake of appearances. I don't want to cause a permanent family rift, but I also can't compromise my well-being. I'm just unsure if I'm being fair or if I'm letting old grudges dictate my actions too much. Has anyone else experienced this kind of long-term family tension and managed to navigate major life events without losing themselves? I want to hear honest perspectives. AITA for refusing to host my brother's wedding after years of tension and being called selfish. I, 32F, have a complicated relationship with my older brother, Mike, 35M. Growing up, he was always the golden child. Our parents constantly praised him for everything, from academics to sports, while I was expected to quietly keep up and never complain. This dynamic created a lot of tension between us, but I always tried to maintain a civil relationship because I didn't want to escalate things further. Over the years, Mike has continued to be controlling and dismissive, particularly toward my life choices. When I decided to move to a different state for work, he called me selfish and accused me of abandoning the family. When I got engaged last year, he made subtle comments questioning my fiancé's career and income, despite having never been supportive of any of my relationships in the past. Mike recently got engaged himself, and the wedding planning started almost immediately. From the start, he assumed I would host the wedding at my house. He lives in a small apartment and has a large extended family, so according to him, my house is the only practical option. My house isn't huge, but it's cozy and has a decent backyard, which is why he latched onto the idea. I politely declined, explaining that hosting a large wedding at my home would be stressful, expensive, and logistically challenging. Mike didn't take my refusal well. He argued that since our parents are elderly and have mobility issues, my home was more convenient. He even suggested that if I didn't host, it would be a huge disappointment to the family. I tried to compromise by offering to help with smaller aspects of the wedding, like sending invitations, assisting with catering, or helping set up decorations. But he dismissed these suggestions. He insisted that if I wasn't hosting, I wasn't doing my part as a sister. The tension escalated when our parents got involved. They called me multiple times, expressing disappointment and implying that I was being unreasonable and selfish. They reminded me of all the times I had benefited from Mike's support and hinted that family loyalty should take precedence over personal inconvenience. While I understand the perspective, I feel like they are ignoring years of emotional strain and unfair treatment for Mike. I finally told Mike and my parents that I would not host the wedding and that I was stepping back from the planning entirely. I said that I would attend the wedding and contribute financially if needed, but I wouldn't be responsible for organizing or providing space for it. Mike reacted angrily, claiming that I was being selfish, cold, and ungrateful. He posted on social media about family members who refused to step up without naming me, but it was obvious who he was referring to. Some extended family members have reached out, expressing shock at the situation and asking me to reconsider. Others have supported my decision, acknowledging that I have been treated unfairly by Mike for years. Despite the support, the backlash from my immediate family has been intense. Our parents have accused me of prioritizing my own comfort over family unity, and Mike has been cold and hostile toward me ever since. I understand that weddings are significant events and that families often expect cooperation, but I feel like my boundaries have been completely ignored. Hosting a large wedding at my home would be incredibly stressful and financially draining, and I don't think it's fair for me to shoulder that responsibility, especially given the history of tension with Mike. Recently, Mike told me that he doesn't want me at the wedding if I don't host, which has left me feeling conflicted and hurt. I want to support my brother and maintain a relationship, but I also feel that my limits and personal life deserve respect. I've been called selfish by multiple family members and even accused of ruining the family dynamic, which makes me question whether I'm overreacting. I'm curious to hear what others think. Am I truly being selfish for refusing to host my brother's wedding, or are my feelings about this situation valid? I want to maintain a relationship with my family, but I also want to uphold boundaries that protect my well-being. I've tried to compromise, but every offer I made was dismissed or turned into another source of guilt. The situation has been emotionally exhausting, and I can't help but feel like the pressure is unreasonable and unfair. So, Reddit AITA for saying no to hosting my brother's wedding after years of tension and being labeled selfish. AITA for refusing to cover my sister-in-law's wedding expenses even though everyone else is contributing. I, 32M, have been married to my wife, Emily, 31F, for 7 years. We have a fairly stable life. Both of us work full-time jobs, we own a small house, and we try to manage our finances responsibly. Emily has a younger sister, Claire, 28F, who has always been a little dramatic and tends to rely on others to solve her problems. Over the years, we've had our ups and downs with her, but I generally try to stay neutral and polite because she's family. Recently, Claire got engaged to a guy named Sam. The engagement itself wasn't a surprise, but the way she approached wedding planning immediately set off alarm bells. She called Emily and me to a coffee shop a few months ago to discuss the wedding budget. At first, I assumed it was about helping with ideas or coordinating schedules. That was not the case. She started by explaining that she and Sam didn't have much money to spend on the wedding. She said the venue was already booked, but catering, decorations, photography, and other expenses were adding up faster than expected. Then she casually mentioned that she had talked to her other siblings, she has 2 older brothers, and other extended family members, and everyone had agreed to contribute to different parts of the wedding. She paused dramatically and then said, "So we were hoping you and Emily could cover the remainder, or at least a significant portion. You're more financially stable, and it's kind of expected." Emily looked shocked, but didn't say anything right away. I felt my blood pressure rise. I knew Claire was exaggerating her financial situation, and the idea that it was expected felt manipulative. I asked her what she meant by significant portion, and she named a number that, frankly, would wipe out almost all our savings. She added that she didn't think anyone else could pay more than a few $100s. I told her we needed to think about it and left the meeting. On the way home, I expressed my frustration to Emily who admitted she was also uncomfortable but didn't want to seem mean. We talked about how this request was not only unreasonable but also disrespectful. We had both worked hard to save for our own house, our retirement, and a future that included possible children. Giving away tens of thousands of dollars for someone else's wedding was not something we could realistically do without jeopardizing our own plans. Emily reluctantly agreed, so I drafted a polite but firm response to Claire. I explained that we couldn't cover her wedding costs. We offered to help in non-monetary ways, coordinating vendors, helping with DIY decorations, or assisting with planning. I also reminded her that we had supported each other in the past in ways that didn't involve large sums of money. I tried to frame it as supportive without being accusatory. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Claire texted us a long message full of guilt-tripping lines about family, obligation, and how disappointed she was. She pointed out that her other siblings had contributed, implying we were being selfish for not matching them. Emily tried to explain that we were not refusing to help entirely, but Claire kept insisting that money was the only meaningful way we could help. Things escalated when Claire started messaging other family members about us. Her parents called Emily multiple times, expressing disappointment. I also received passive-aggressive texts from her brothers, hinting that we were not pulling our weight as a family. Emily and I tried to clarify our stance, but Claire had already framed it as us refusing to support her dream wedding while everyone else pitched in. We even offered to attend the wedding and help in tangible ways during the event. We volunteered to drive, help with setup, and assist in organizing activities. None of that seemed sufficient. Claire's tone remained hostile and accusing. The stress from the situation has started to affect our marriage. Emily feels torn because she wants to support her sister, but also understands why we can't shoulder the financial burden. I feel frustrated because what began as a reasonable offer to help in practical ways turned into a family conflict over money, which is something we had explicitly said we could not provide. I spoke to a few close friends for perspective, and they all agreed that expecting someone to cover tens of thousands of dollars for a sibling's wedding is extreme, especially when there are alternatives for helping that don't involve financial contributions. Still, Emily worries that our refusal will create permanent tension within the family. A week ago, Claire sent another message, this time directly stating, "If you really loved me, you would help me financially. Otherwise, don't expect me to have a relationship with you." That crossed a line for me. I responded calmly, reiterating that we loved her and wanted to support her in ways that didn't endanger our financial future, but I also made it clear that emotional blackmail would not change our decision. Now, some family members are asking Emily and me to reconsider, saying that weddings are special and that contributing is a sign of family unity. Others are on our side, arguing that it's unreasonable to expect us to pay for someone else's event when we have our own financial responsibilities. Emily is stressed and sometimes hints that maybe we should just give in to avoid family conflict. I feel strongly that giving in would set a dangerous precedent for future expectations and could cause resentment later. I want to maintain a relationship with Claire, but I can't compromise our financial stability or our principles. I also don't want to let guilt manipulate our choices. Emily and I have discussed this extensively, and we agree that our current stance is fair and reasonable. The only issue is that it has caused a huge family rift. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to cover my sister-in-law's wedding expenses, even though others in the family are contributing and she's trying to pressure us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. So I, 29F, have always been the responsible sister. My younger sister, Emma, 26F, has a flair for drama and tends to act impulsively. Growing up, I often felt like the parent in our household, which I'm fine with for the most part, but it does shape how I view people and their choices. Lately, though, I feel like my role as the voice of reason has put me at odds with my family in ways I didn't anticipate. Here's the situation. Emma recently got engaged to a man named Derek, 30M. On the surface, Derek seems charming and fun. He's outgoing, has a great job, and seems genuinely happy with Emma. The issue is that he has a history of extremely manipulative and controlling behavior, which I only learned about after he and Emma became serious. I didn't know the full extent at first, but over time, multiple red flags became impossible to ignore. When Emma and Derek first started dating, she would tell me little stories that seemed harmless at first, like him jokingly telling her not to hang out with certain friends because they were a bad influence, or how he would subtly insist she dress or act a certain way. I brushed it off initially because I assumed they were just playful disagreements that every couple has. But then I started hearing stories from mutual friends that were far more concerning. Derek had a pattern of isolating partners from their friends and family, controlling finances, and pressuring them to make life decisions in his favor. I tried to approach Emma delicately, but it didn't go well. I remember sitting down with her for coffee, trying to explain that I was concerned about some things I had heard and observed. I made it very clear I wasn't attacking her or saying she was making a mistake, but rather that I wanted her to be aware of warning signs. Emma's reaction was defensive, to say the least. She told me I was overreacting, that he had changed, and that I was being judgmental. I dropped it because I realized pushing too hard would likely drive a wedge between us. Fast forward to the engagement announcement. I congratulated her, but also expressed, very lightly, that I hoped she was making sure she was happy and safe. Emma responded with a lengthy message about how I was being negative, how Derek was a good man. Will always love Emma and want her to be happy, but I cannot in good conscience celebrate a union that seems to have major warning signs for her safety and emotional well-being. My friends are divided too. Some think I'm doing the right thing by prioritizing emotional safety over tradition, while others say I should swallow my discomfort and attend to keep family harmony. I understand both perspectives, but I genuinely feel that my absence is a form of care, not malice. To make matters more complicated, Emma has started posting on social media about how she is heartbroken that her sister won't be part of her big day. I feel guilty seeing these posts because I never imagined this would become such a public feud. My heart is with her, but my mind is telling me I cannot ignore the warning signs of what I see as a potentially dangerous relationship dynamic. At this point, I'm caught between protecting my own conscience and maintaining family peace. I worry about the fallout from skipping the wedding, but I also worry about what enabling the situation might mean for Emma in the long term. I'm exhausted emotionally and feel like there's no winning scenario here. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of concerns about her fiancé's past and current behavior. I've tried to explain myself calmly, and I truly want the best for her, but I cannot bring myself to participate in a celebration that feels wrong on a fundamental level. Has anyone dealt with a similar situation where moral or ethical concerns are conflicted with family expectations? I'm feeling isolated, confused, and guilty, and I'm trying to figure out what the right balance is between love and self-preservation. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she ruined my wedding. I, 29F, have always been close to my sister, Emily, 32F, but our relationship has been complicated for years. Growing up, Emily was the perfect child in the eyes of our parents. High-achieving, athletic, charismatic, while I was more introverted and struggled with anxiety. Despite this, we shared many happy memories, and I genuinely thought we could rely on each other as adults. That all changed when I got engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 30M. Mark and I had been together for 6 years, and I had always dreamed of a small, intimate wedding with close family and friends. I am someone who overthinks and plans everything meticulously, and my dream wedding was no exception. Emily, on the other hand, thrives on drama and attention. I had always known she liked to be the center of attention, but I didn't think it would ever affect me this deeply. I planned everything with Mark, from the venue to the guest list and even the catering. I had one rule about Emily. She could participate in the wedding, but she had to respect my wishes and not try to overshadow me. I even made a gentle request that she not post any dramatic or potentially embarrassing photos on social media. I thought this was reasonable. The problem began during the week of the wedding. Emily showed up at my parents' house, where I was staying to prepare for the big day, with an entourage of friends I had never met. She immediately started making demands about what she thought the wedding should look like, from rearranging the flowers to suggesting we switch the seating chart. I reminded her politely that I had planned everything and that her help, while appreciated, needed to respect my vision. She laughed it off and said she was just trying to help make it perfect. I didn't think much of it at the time, assuming she would back down. The real issue happened on the day of the wedding. Everything was going smoothly until the ceremony began. Emily had somehow convinced our officiant to let her say a few words from the family without my knowledge. I walked down the aisle expecting the usual formalities, and then she started talking. What started as a sweet anecdote quickly turned into a veiled critique of my choices. She mentioned how stressful wedding planning can be, how she had been buried under the weight of responsibilities no one else seemed to notice, and how my parents had always favored her. People laughed, thinking it was a funny story, but I could feel my cheeks burning with embarrassment. It got worse. During the reception, Emily went on a tirade at the microphone about how Mark and I were so predictable and how she hoped we were ready for a boring life together. Again, most of the guests laughed, but my heart sank. She then posted several photos online, including one of me tripping slightly while entering the reception hall, captioned with a joke that implied I was clumsy and unfit to marry. That post went viral among our friends and colleagues, and I had to explain multiple times that it wasn't stage humor, it was real life, and I was mortified. After the wedding, I confronted Emily privately. I told her that what she did was unacceptable, that she had embarrassed me in front of everyone I cared about, and that I couldn't just move on as if nothing happened. Emily's response was that I was too sensitive and that weddings were meant to be fun and dramatic. She accused me of trying to control everything and said I needed to lighten up. Our parents sided with her to some extent, saying that she didn't mean any harm and that I should forgive her. My friends were supportive, but I could feel the tension creeping into every family gathering since the wedding. I decided to cut Emily out of my life for a while. I stopped attending family dinners when she was there and limited communication to texts about urgent matters only. Here's where the conflict escalates. Emily has been trying to reconcile with me for months, sending gifts, letters, and even trying to show up at my apartment unannounced. She posted a long apology on social media that, to me, seemed more performative than genuine. She wrote things like, "I regret the drama, but I hope everyone can see I was just being playful," which felt dismissive of the fact that she ruined one of the most important days of my life. Some people in my circle think I am overreacting. My mom told me I need to forgive Emily because she is my sister and that holding grudges will only hurt our family. Even Mark has been cautious, saying he doesn't want me to live in anger, but he also supports my decision to set boundaries. I have tried therapy and even considered reaching out to Emily to explain my feelings calmly, but every time I think about what she did, I feel a surge of anger and humiliation. I worry that if I forgive her too soon, it would send a message that it's acceptable to ruin major milestones in someone else's life for attention. On the other hand, I also feel guilty for essentially ostracizing my sister. So, AITA for refusing to forgive my sister after she humiliated me at my wedding and continues to downplay her actions. I want to add that I am not looking for advice on how to patch things up unless it's about understanding whether I'm in the wrong morally. I understand relationships are complex, but I truly want to know if my reaction is reasonable given the circumstances. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering a long-hidden family secret. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my family. My parents divorced when I was very young, and my younger sister, Lily, 25F, and I were raised primarily by our mom. Over the years, our relationship has been somewhat strained because of our very different personalities and life choices. Lily has always been very outgoing, ambitious, and self-centered at times, while I have tended to be quieter, more reserved, and very sensitive to conflict. Despite this, I've always tried to support her when I could. Recently, Lily got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Jason, 27M, and the wedding planning has been intense. She immediately made it clear that she wanted me to be heavily involved, despite the fact that I have a full-time job that often requires long hours and travel. I agreed to help where I could, mostly with invitations, decorations, and some minor planning tasks. I never anticipated that this would turn into a major source of stress for me. A few weeks ago, my mom accidentally let slip a comment that made me extremely uncomfortable. She mentioned that our dad had another family that we didn't know about when we were younger. Initially, I thought she meant some distant relatives, but after asking more questions, it turned out that my dad had actually had another child around the same time I was born. This child, a half-sibling, had been kept secret from me and Lily for our entire lives. According to my mom, my dad had felt guilty and wanted to provide for them, but for some reason, he never told me or Lily. I was blindsided. I spent a few days processing the news, trying to figure out how to feel. I eventually decided to reach out to my half-sibling, whose name is Aaron, 28M. We started talking over messages and phone calls, and I discovered that he had known about me for a few years, but had never reached out, partly out of fear of being rejected and partly because he wasn't sure how to approach me. Things got even more complicated when I found out that Aaron and Jason, my sister's fiancé, actually work together. They've been friends for years. I had no idea when Lily and Jason started dating. It's not that there's anything inappropriate between Jason and Aaron, but it felt like a small world and also a reminder that the connections in my family's lives have always been tangled. I didn't know how to handle this information, so I spoke to my sister about it. I wanted to see if she understood how difficult this was for me. Unfortunately, she completely dismissed my feelings. She said that it was irrelevant to her wedding, that I was overreacting, and that I should just get over it and help her because it was her big day. She accused me of trying to ruin her wedding by bringing in family drama, which I absolutely was not trying to do. After that conversation, I felt completely alienated. I started to question why I should be involved in a celebration where I felt so invisible and betrayed by my own family. I tried to express that to my mom and my dad, but both of them minimized the situation. My dad said he didn't want to dig up the past, and that he hoped I could just move on for the sake of my sister. My mom said she thought it was for the best that I stay away from drama, even though she was the one who revealed the secret. I realized that attending the wedding would force me to be around people who either lied to me, hid things from me, or dismissed my feelings. I tried to explain this to Lily, but she became angry and accusatory. She said I was selfish, dramatic, and that I was making her wedding about myself. She also brought up that I had missed other family events in the past, and that I always make everything about your issues. I ended up making the decision not to attend the wedding. I told Lily that I loved her and wish her the best, but that I could not celebrate while feeling so hurt and excluded from my own family's truth. She responded by sending me a long, angry text listing all the ways I had let her down and how I was ruining family relationships. My parents also tried to guilt me, implying that I was betraying the family by refusing to participate. Since then, tensions have escalated. Lily is now refusing to speak to me. My mom keeps texting me passive-aggressively about how I'm being so difficult, and my dad has mostly gone silent. Even friends who have seen the situation say that they understand why I'm upset, but some have also suggested that I should just put my feelings aside for one day to support my sister. I feel torn. On one hand, I want to respect my sister's big day, but on the other hand, I feel deeply disrespected and hurt by the long-term secrecy and by the lack of empathy from my family. I'm not trying to sabotage anything. I just can't pretend everything is fine when I feel like a key part of my identity and family history was hidden from me for decades. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering a long-hidden family secret and feeling like my family has consistently dismissed my feelings? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my family? I, 34M, have always been close to my family, but my relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 29F, has been complicated. Growing up, Emily was the golden child, outgoing, charming, and seemingly perfect in the eyes of our parents. I, on the other hand, was quieter and more reserved. I never minded this, but it did create a dynamic where I sometimes felt invisible especially in family events and celebrations. Over time, I accepted it because Emily always seemed to get what she wanted, and honestly, it didn't feel worth a fight. Things started to shift when Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Tom, 31, about a year ago. Initially, I was happy for her. She seemed genuinely in love, and for once I thought our family dynamic might balance out a little. However, as soon as the engagement became public, Emily's behavior changed in ways that directly affected my family. To start, Emily and Tom were extremely particular about their wedding guest list. They wanted a small, intimate wedding, which I could understand, but they also imposed rigid rules about who could attend. My parents, who have always been generous and accommodating, were not thrilled about the restrictions, but they tried to respect Emily's wishes. The problem arose when Emily started criticizing my parents' friends and extended family. She made comments about how unsuitable certain people were to be at her wedding and repeatedly said that she didn't want anyone who might cause drama. My parents were hurt, but tried to brush it off. The tension escalated when Emily sent out invitations. She excluded my cousin and her partner, who had been close to the family for decades, and specifically told my parents not to invite them. When my parents asked why, Emily claimed they were inappropriate and that their presence would ruin the wedding photos. My parents felt humiliated and told me about it. I was frustrated, but I didn't get involved initially, thinking it wasn't my fight. A few months later, Emily's controlling behavior extended to me. She insisted that I act as the coordinator for a few of the pre-wedding events. At first, I agreed, thinking it would be manageable. However, she micromanaged every detail, from the colors of the table settings to the exact wording of speeches. When I suggested small adjustments based on practicality, she reacted with passive-aggressive comments, like saying I didn't understand her vision and that I was being disrespectful. It became exhausting, and I began dreading any interaction with her. The breaking point came last month during a family dinner at my parents' house. Emily and Tom came over to discuss final wedding details. The conversation quickly devolved into an argument when Emily started criticizing my father's choice of suit for the rehearsal dinner, implying it was too old-fashioned and embarrassing. She then turned her attention to my mother, saying her hairstyle looked tired and that she should consider modern options. My parents tried to remain calm, but the comments were cutting and unnecessary. I spoke up and told Emily that her remarks were hurtful and disrespectful. Instead of apologizing, she accused me of being overly sensitive and claimed that she was just being honest. After that dinner, I realized that attending her wedding would not feel celebratory for me. I discussed it with my parents, explaining that I didn't want to subject myself to another situation where my family's dignity would be disrespected. My parents were conflicted. They wanted me there, but also understood why I felt the way I did. I ultimately sent Emily a message explaining that I would not be attending her wedding. I emphasized that this decision was not made lightly and that it was due to repeated instances where she had treated our family unfairly. Emily's response was explosive. She accused me of being selfish and petty, saying that my absence would ruin the most important day of her life and that I was choosing my ego over family. She told our parents that I was the reason they couldn't have a harmonious wedding, even though my parents had defended me privately. My parents tried to mediate, suggesting a compromise, like attending the ceremony but skipping the reception, but I refused. I felt that any participation would be interpreted as condoning her behavior, and I couldn't do that in good conscience. Since then, the family atmosphere has been tense. My parents are sad but supportive of my choice. Emily has stopped talking to me directly and has been passive-aggressive toward my parents. Relatives who are closer to her have started subtly criticizing me, calling me dramatic and unsupportive. Some friends have suggested that I should just attend to avoid family drama, but I feel like doing so would betray my own boundaries and the respect I feel my parents deserve. I understand that a wedding is a special day for the bride and groom, and I genuinely wish Emily happiness. However, I also feel that attending would make me complicit in allowing her to disrespect my family. I am trying to stick to my principles and maintain my own mental well-being, but the backlash has been difficult. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she has treated my family? Character count, 6,512. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade-long family feud? This is going to be a long one, so I appreciate anyone who reads it through. I, 34 am, have a sister, Sarah, 36F, and our relationship has been strained for most of our adult lives. I'll try to lay out the events as objectively as possible, but I'll warn you up front that there's a lot of history here. Growing up, Sarah and I were always different. I was more introverted, studious, and cautious, while she was outgoing, adventurous, and impulsive. Our parents were, frankly, terrible at mediating conflicts. If we fought, it was usually ignored or blown out of proportion. Most of the time, I ended up feeling like the scapegoat. For example, when she broke something in the house, I often got blamed because I was closer to it or should have been watching out. She never received any consequences for her actions, which fostered resentment on my part. After college, our paths diverged further. I moved to another state for work and built a relatively quiet life. Sarah stayed in her hometown, got married briefly in her 20s, divorced within 2 years, and then went through several short-term relationships. During this time, she developed a habit of constantly messaging me for favors, financial help, or emotional support. I was always happy to help early on, but over time, it became draining. She would often make big requests and then guilt-trip me when I hesitated or said no. The tipping point came about 10 years ago. Sarah was dating a guy named Marcus at the time, and they were having major relationship issues. She called me one evening in tears, claiming Marcus had done something terrible and needed me to fix it. I listened, offered advice, and tried to be supportive. A few days later, I found out from another family member that much of what she had told me was exaggerated or outright false. She had manipulated the story to make me side with her in an argument with Marcus. I was furious, and I told her that I couldn't keep being her emotional dumping ground, especially if she was going to twist facts. Our parents didn't take my side, which added another layer of frustration. They were always closer to Sarah and seemed to dismiss my concerns as me being too sensitive. The fallout from this incident caused a major rift. We didn't speak for years except for obligatory holiday texts and birthday greetings. I had started therapy by this time, and my therapist encouraged me to maintain boundaries with her for my mental health. Fast forward to last year, Sarah got engaged again. This time, she's marrying a man named Tom, who I've met a few times and seemed decent enough. When she called me to invite me to the wedding, I had a sinking feeling. The invitation wasn't just a simple invite. It came with a note detailing seating arrangements, what she expected me to do, like giving a speech or helping with decorations, and a subtle reminder that family should stick together. The way it was worded felt manipulative, like she assumed I would drop everything to comply. I hesitated. I thought about all the years of tension, the one-sided emotional labor, and the lingering resentment. I also consider my own life, my partner, my work commitments, my mental health. I decided to respond politely but firmly, saying that I couldn't attend. I explained that due to our history and my need to maintain boundaries, it wasn't something I could do. That was the last time I heard from her. My parents called me repeatedly over the next few weeks, telling me I was being selfish and ruining the family. They insisted that I had to attend to show support and keep the peace, but I stood my ground. I even offered to send a gift or record a video message congratulating them, but they rejected that as insufficient. Now, the wedding happened last month. From what I've heard through mutual friends and extended family, my absence was noticed and commented on extensively. Sarah reportedly cried during the ceremony, saying she doesn't understand why her brother hates her. My parents haven't spoken to me since, except for occasional curt messages expressing disappointment. A few other relatives have asked me why I didn't go, and I've tried to explain as diplomatically as possible, but I feel like no one truly sees my perspective. I know some people might say I should have attended despite everything for the sake of family or to avoid drama. But the truth is, I feel like my mental health and boundaries are more important than attending an event that I would have felt anxious and resentful at. I also think it's important to recognize that relationships should be mutual. If I had a history of manipulating her or constantly burdening her with guilt, I might feel differently. But this has always been one-sided, and attending now would feel like rewarding that behavior. I'm also aware that people might argue I could have tried harder to reconcile before the wedding, but I did reach out in small ways over the past decade. Sarah never made any serious effort to repair the relationship either. I can't rebuild a relationship on my own indefinitely. I'm sharing this because I genuinely want perspective. I don't want to feel like the villain here, but I also know that many people see family obligations differently. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after everything that's happened? AITA for refusing to help my sister after she humiliated me in front of our family? This is going to be long because there's a lot of context, but I want to get the full picture across. I, 29F, have a younger sister, Emma, 26F, who has always been competitive with me. Growing up, it was mostly harmless teasing and sibling rivalry. But in the past few years, it's escalated into a pattern where she seems to actively try to make me look bad in front of others. I usually brush it off, but last weekend was the tipping point. Emma recently started dating someone new, Jason, who is charming and seems genuinely nice. I've never really had a problem with him, but the issue is how Emma treats me when he's around. She acts like I'm incompetent or ridiculous, often twisting things I say into jokes to make herself look smarter or funnier. I know it's petty, but it stings, especially when it happens in front of family or friends. Our parents hosted a small family dinner last Saturday. Emma was invited, of course, and I was looking forward to catching up with my cousins and a few other relatives I hadn't seen in months. Everything was fine until the main course was served. I had spent the week experimenting with a new recipe, a roasted vegetable lasagna with a homemade bechamel sauce. I was proud of it, and honestly, I thought it tasted amazing. My parents are usually polite about food, so I didn't expect to get too much feedback. As everyone was sitting down, Emma started asking me questions about the ingredients, acting all innocent and curious. I explained the details, mentioning that I'd spent a lot of time perfecting the sauce because I wanted it to be creamy but not too heavy. She nodded and smiled, then proceeded to make a comment loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Wow, it's really impressive that you can make something that tastes edible without burning down the kitchen. Good job, I guess." There was laughter from a few cousins, and even my parents chuckled nervously. I felt my face go red, and I tried to laugh it off, saying something like, "Well, thank you, I think." But the damage was done. The rest of the dinner, she kept making little jabs about my cooking, my job, my apartment, and even my recent vacation photos, framing everything as funny observations. By the time dessert rolled around, I was quiet and distant, just trying to get through the evening. After dinner, Emma came up to me privately and said, "Why are you so sensitive?" I was just joking. You can't take a joke. I told her that the jokes were mean and that it wasn't funny to make me the punchline in front of our family. She rolled her eyes and walked away, muttering something about me being too serious. Here's where it escalates. On Sunday, our parents asked if anyone could help Emma move some furniture in her new apartment. She had been asking everyone in the family for help, and I initially said yes. But after reflecting on what happened the night before, I decided I wasn't in the mood to be treated like a clown while lifting heavy furniture. I told her, politely, that I couldn't help this time because I was tired and had other commitments. Emma immediately blew up. She called me selfish, immature, and unhelpful. She started sending messages to our parents, saying I was being dramatic and ruining family harmony. I explained to our parents what happened at dinner, but they kind of shrugged and said, "Emma was joking. You're taking it too seriously." I tried to explain that it's not just the dinner. It's a pattern of belittling me whenever she can, but they still seem to think I overreacted. Things got worse when Emma's boyfriend got involved. He sent me a long message basically implying that I should just lighten up and that family dinners are about fun, not feelings. He said it was immature to refuse helping with furniture just because of a joke. I responded politely but firmly, explaining that I don't appreciate being humiliated and that helping her move, while holding a grudge, would only make me resentful and risk damaging furniture. Since then, Emma has been avoiding me, posting passive-aggressive messages on social media, and even muttering to our parents that I'm so difficult to deal with. I know she's upset, but I also feel like I need to set boundaries, or this will never stop. A few cousins have privately told me they think Emma went too far, but I still feel guilty because everyone keeps hinting that I should just help her and move on to keep the peace. I want to make it clear. I would help if she treated me with respect, but after being openly humiliated, I just can't bring myself to do it. I also feel like my parents are partially siding with her by saying I overreacted. I don't want to create permanent tension, but I also don't want to be walked over. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister move furniture after she humiliated me in front of the family. Additional context, if relevant. I have helped her move before without complaining, and I've lent her money and time on multiple occasions. Emma has a history of teasing me in front of others, but it has never escalated into this level of outright mockery until recently. Our parents are generally conflict-averse and want everyone to just get along, which makes them minimize my feelings. I am torn because I love my sister, and I don't want our relationship to be permanently damaged, but I also don't want to let her treat me like a doormat. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house and causing a massive family fallout. I, 32F, have a house that I've spent the last 6 years renovating. It's not a mansion by any means, but it's a cozy, modern 2-story with a decent backyard. I live here with my partner, Alex, 34M, and our 2 dogs. Over the years, my house has become a safe haven for me. I enjoy hosting small gatherings, but large events like weddings feel overwhelming and stressful for me. My younger sister, Jenna, 28F, got engaged 6 months ago. From the start, she told me she wanted an intimate wedding, but with a big party afterward. Initially, I was thrilled and excited to help, assuming she meant I'd offer advice and help with planning. That's where the tension started. She kept bringing up hosting the wedding at my house. At first, I thought she was joking, but then she became very serious. Her reasoning was that my backyard is beautiful, and she wanted the wedding to feel personal. She even said, "You've done all this work on your house. It deserves to be seen." I tried to explain that I was uncomfortable with the idea. I have dogs who are not fond of large crowds. I don't want people walking through my house in heels and fancy dresses, and the thought of cleaning up after 50-plus people for a wedding reception stressed me out. I suggested other venues, like a local garden or a small hall, but she insisted that it wouldn't be the same. I finally told her that while I love her and want her wedding to be special, hosting at my house is not something I can do. I offered to help in other ways, planning, coordinating, helping pick a venue, or even helping decorate wherever she chooses, but I could not host. She was shocked and hurt. She claimed I was being selfish and that I wasn't being a supportive sister. I explained that it's not about selfishness, it's about boundaries. She didn't accept that. The tension escalated when she told our parents about my refusal. They called me, saying I should compromise for the sake of family, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. I reminded them that I've supported them and her in many ways over the years, but that hosting a large wedding is something I am not comfortable with. I also mentioned that the stress and logistics would affect my mental health, which I think should matter. They argued that I was making it about me, not Jenna. Things came to a head when Jenna decided to host a planning meeting at my house without asking me. She showed up with friends, vendors, and her fiancé. I was livid because I had a busy day and wasn't prepared for a crowd. I asked them to leave, explaining calmly but firmly that I wasn't hosting anything and that this behavior crossed a boundary. Jenna cried and accused me of being dramatic. After that incident, the family drama exploded. My parents now take Jenna's side, saying I'm ruining family relationships. My other sister, who is married, says I should just let it go and make her happy. Alex has been supportive, telling me I'm not wrong for setting boundaries. He even offered to help me enforce them if needed. I feel like I've tried to compromise by offering support in ways that don't involve hosting. I offered to help with seating arrangements, picking flowers, and even helping with DIY decorations. I thought those were fair contributions, but they apparently aren't enough. Jenna hasn't spoken to me for weeks, and my parents are giving me the cold shoulder whenever I visit. Family members have started posting passive-aggressive comments on social media, indirectly criticizing me. I feel guilty for causing tension, but I also feel justified for standing my ground. The most frustrating part is that nobody seems to understand why I can't just host for a day. It's not about money. I could technically afford it. It's about personal space, mental health, and boundaries. I've always been the sister who helped plan birthdays, holidays, and family events, but hosting a full wedding is beyond what I can handle. I'm wondering if I really am being unreasonable. I don't want to ruin my relationship with my sister, but I also don't want to be forced into something that will cause me stress and resentment. I feel like if I give in, it will set a precedent where I'm always expected to sacrifice my comfort for everyone else. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house, even though it's causing a huge family fallout. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan my wedding. So this is going to be long, but I'll try to give all the necessary details. I, 29F, have been engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 32M, for about a year now. Our wedding is set for next summer, and we've been slowly organizing everything ourselves. My sister, Lily, 27F, got engaged 6 months after us, and while I'm genuinely happy for her, our relationship has always been a little competitive. We love each other, but there's always been this unspoken tension, like we're trying to outdo one another. A few months ago, Lily got very serious about her wedding planning, and she mentioned her fiancé, Alex, 28M, who is very particular, let's say. He has strong opinions about everything, from color schemes to catering styles. One night, Lily jokingly suggested that Alex could give me tips on my wedding. I laughed it off, assuming it was a joke, but over the next few weeks, it became clear that Alex was taking this seriously. It started subtly. He sent me a long email with suggestions for my venue choice, saying that it wasn't exactly practical and that a wedding like mine deserved something grander. I thanked him politely, but explained that we had already booked a venue and were very happy with it. Then came the seating chart suggestions. I got another email with a 10-page PDF of proposed seating arrangements, including notes on who should sit where to maximize social dynamics. I told him again, politely, that we were finalizing our own seating chart and appreciated the advice. Things escalated when he started posting messages in our shared family group chat. He would comment on my dress choice, flower arrangements, and even our guest list. Every time I tried to politely decline or redirect the conversation, he would respond with, "I just want to help. I don't want you to make mistakes." Lily seemed oblivious, saying things like, "He's just excited. Don't take it personally." I tried to be patient, but it felt like he was slowly taking over my wedding planning without asking. The breaking point came a few weeks ago. I had a meeting with our caterer to finalize the menu, and I made a small change to a dessert option. Later that evening, I got a text from Alex saying, "I saw your change with the caterer. Honestly, I think it's a bad idea. People won't like it. You really should stick to the original plan." I replied, again politely, that we appreciated his input, but were confident in our decisions. Then he texted back, "If you want, I can handle this for you. I've done this before, and it will save you stress." That was it for me. I blocked him from texting me about the wedding and sent Lily a very firm message explaining that Alex cannot be involved in our wedding planning at all. I said it wasn't personal against him, but it was our day, and we wanted to make the decisions ourselves. Lily called me later, crying, saying that I was being unreasonable and that Alex was just trying to help. I explained my perspective calmly. We've been planning this for a year. We have a vision, and no one else, including family members or their fiancés, should override our choices. Lily accused me of humiliating Alex and ruining their fun. She said that family gatherings would be awkward now and that I was being selfish. I told her that I wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but my boundaries had to be respected. Since then, she's barely spoken to me, and when we met at a family dinner last week, she kept giving me icy glares and whispered to Alex several times in front of me. He smirked a few times, which I think was him trying to assert control or make me feel guilty. Now, my parents are subtly pressuring me too, saying I should let Alex contribute because he's enthusiastic and clearly knows what he's talking about. Mark is fully on my side, but he's frustrated because he doesn't want this tension to affect the family. I feel like if I let Alex get involved, it will turn my wedding into something that isn't ours. I've tried everything: polite rejection, blocking messages, and direct conversation with Lily, but they act like I'm overreacting. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé plan or heavily influence my wedding. I feel like I'm standing up for my own choices, but now the family is treating me like I'm the villain for not letting a third party run my wedding. I realize this is a long story, but the way things have escalated makes me wonder if I'm being unreasonable. My wedding is supposed to be one of the happiest times of my life, but now I feel like I'm navigating a minefield. Has anyone dealt with a situation where a family member or their partner keeps trying to take over your wedding plans? I'm trying to be firm, but not mean, and I honestly just want my day to reflect what Mark and I envisioned. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay in my house after she lied about her financial situation. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I grew up with my parents emphasizing financial independence and accountability, which I took to heart. I work in marketing, have a stable career, and live in a modest but comfortable two-bedroom apartment in the city. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, has always been more impulsive. She's smart and charming, but she has a long history of poor money management, bouncing between jobs, and getting herself into situations where she relies on others to bail her out. A couple of months ago, Emily called me, sounding panicked and distressed. She told me she had been evicted from her apartment due to a sudden rent increase she couldn't afford. She claimed that she had a job lined up in my city and needed a place to stay while she got settled. She begged me to let her stay in my apartment for at least a month, promising she would pay me back for any expenses and that it would only be temporary. I hesitated but felt guilty about her situation and agreed, thinking I could set some clear boundaries. The first week was manageable. Emily contributed to groceries, cleaned up after herself, and seemed genuinely grateful. But things started to shift. She began staying out late without notice, leaving messes in the apartment, and making excuses for why she couldn't contribute financially even though I knew she was getting paid. I reminded her politely that this arrangement was temporary and that she needed to pay me back as we had agreed. She got defensive and said I was being unfair, insisting that my apartment was her home too, while she figured things out. Then came the financial twist. A few weeks in, I discovered that Emily hadn't been completely honest with me about her job situation. She had been in the city for a week before calling me and had already been living with a friend rent-free, but she wanted my apartment because it was closer to a nightlife area she liked. I felt betrayed and confronted her. She admitted to exaggerating her circumstances, but argued that she needed a place to stay and that I should understand her situation. I tried to explain that trust is important and that I couldn't continue to host her if she wasn't being truthful. Things escalated when she started borrowing money from me for small expenses, claiming she would pay it back soon, which never happened. I realized that her pattern of manipulation hadn't changed at all, and I decided it was time to set a firm boundary. I told her that she needed to find alternative housing immediately and that I could no longer accommodate her in my apartment. She was furious and accused me of being cruel and unsupportive, saying that families should always help each other. The confrontation got worse when she invited a few of her friends over while I was at work, assuming it was okay because she was living here now. I came home to a noisy apartment, strangers in my living room, and empty containers from food she had ordered without telling me. I told her again, more firmly, that she had to leave by the end of the week. She packed her things huffily but left with a lot of resentment, telling me I was heartless and selfish. My parents got involved afterward. They were upset with me, saying I should have been more patient and supportive and that Emily was in a difficult situation. I explained the full context, her lying, borrowing money without repayment, and having strangers over, but they felt I could have handled it more gently. My friends, on the other hand, backed me up, saying that my boundaries were reasonable and that I had no obligation to host someone who had been dishonest and disrespectful. Since then, Emily hasn't spoken to me much, aside from occasional passive-aggressive texts. I feel guilty for how things ended, but I also feel like I made the right decision for my own well-being. I worry that my parents view me as the bad sibling, but I can't keep compromising my space and finances for someone who consistently disrespects my boundaries. I want to add that I have tried to be supportive in other ways, helping her look for apartments, giving advice on budgeting, and checking in on her occasionally, but I draw the line at letting someone take advantage of me. My question is, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after discovering she had lied about her financial situation. The situation has left me anxious about future interactions with her. I want to maintain a relationship, but I also need to protect myself from similar situations. I wondered if I overreacted, but I keep coming back to the fact that honesty and respect for boundaries seem like reasonable expectations for a family member. I know family obligations are important, but I also believe that helping someone shouldn't come at the cost of your own mental health or financial stability. I'm conflicted because I don't want to be seen as unsupportive, but I also don't want to be manipulated or taken advantage of. I have considered reaching out to Emily to try to mend the relationship, but I'm wary of being drawn back into the same cycle. I feel like this incident has permanently changed the dynamic between us, and I'm unsure how to navigate family events where she will likely be present. I've reflected on this extensively, and while I do feel some guilt, I also recognize that boundaries are a necessary part of any healthy relationship. I'm open to advice on whether there's a reasonable way to reconcile without compromising myself or my space, or if walking away from cohabitation with her was the right call. In short, I let her stay initially out of compassion, but once I discovered the dishonesty and manipulative patterns, I drew a firm boundary. She left angry, my parents are disappointed in my handling, and I'm stuck wondering if I was actually unreasonable or if protecting myself was the correct decision. AITA, thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.